Hello, welcome to Something Positive for Positive People. My name is Courtney Brain. Something Positive for Positive People is a 501c3 nonprofit organization supporting people navigating herpes stigma. We teach people how to talk about herpes in a way that is stigma free. This includes health professionals as well as people who may need help with disclosing their status and having these conversations with sexual partners. If you are curious about what else we do, please visit www.spfpp.org. And September 29th, 2024, we are hosting the Safe Sex Expo. And this is really just an introduction to the world of resources that are most commonly found in sex positivity, looking at resources that non monogamous people have used or come into contact with that I feel have been very useful or offer a lot of value to people who might be monogamous, as well as in the kink world that people can apply if they're more vanilla. I find that those spaces tend to be rather intimidating for folks to get into, and those spaces are super helpful and supportive to people, especially if you're redefining what sex looks like for you after your herpes diagnosis. Oh, actually, I've never said that out loud before. I think I need to like make a video and make that as a promo for it because that was good. I hope I remember this after listening to this. But yeah, that's my sales point. If you go to the events tab at spfpp.org, you'll be able to register for the event. It is live September 29th, all day from 11 a.m. to about 8 p.m. We'll have 4 workshops. We'll have vendors there. People will be socializing and connecting and all this good stuff. And we're doing that in partnership with No Shame in This Game documentary. There will also be, hopefully, a documentary showing for those who've missed that. So I hope to see y'all out there. Like, come check it out. If you have any questions about it, please reach out to me. I'm seeing some guys signing up, which is a great sign. That means that it's not just going to be all the ladies showing up and doing this fun explorative work. There may be opportunities to may go on some dates or something. And I know people have complained lately about dating being as much of a challenge as it is, but we're hoping that by bringing this community together of like-minded individuals, that maybe it doesn't have to be. All right. So today I have a guest with me here. Her name is Lauren. What is your TikTok name? Bubble and Blue?
It's Bubbly and Blue. It's been my username since I was on AIM in like 2010.
My aim. Oh, way to age yourself. Oh,
Yeah.
that just took me back. That took me
Yeah.
back. So I'll let you introduce yourself and then we'll go ahead and go into the interview.
So hi, I'm Lauren. I'm better known as Bubbly and Blue on TikTok and my lovely lady lump 69 on Reddit. I run the herpes question subreddit page as well.
Did you put that on your intake form?
Yeah, I might have. I think I did.
All right, because I feel like that would have stood out. Because hold on, let me look. Because I got it pulled up right here, right now. I did not see that about Reddit. It was the last sentence. That's how you know I'm
Yeah, it
reading
was the
shit.
last time.
I'm sorry. Well,
So many
that's
people don't
awesome.
put it together because I made the Reddit first and I didn't know if I wanted my username to be the same one that I used for like Instagram and stuff. And then when I made the TikTok, I didn't know I was going to be a herpes advocate. And I made that my regular username. And then I just started doing herpes content. And I'm like, well, it's too late to change it now. So
I feel like such a dick for not reading that part. Like I skimmed through, I read, I was like, okay, cool, cool. Because I don't like knowing too much about the person I'm interviewing because I think that takes out some of the curiosity and the genuine surprise, like me being surprised that you run the herpes questions Reddit.
it
'Cause
happens so much that like people will be messaging me on both TikTok and Reddit and not realizing they're messaging the same person. And then out of
no,
nowhere, they put it together and they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, oh yeah, by the way.
that's awesome. Well, to start I don't want to get off track, but that's kind of what I do anyway. How did you get started with that? Like, I'm curious. Like, what made you decide I'm going to start a Reddit group, and what made you decide to be open about having herpes?
So during COVID, I went through a recent. So I had an ex-boyfriend who decided to out me to a lot of my friends that I had herpes. And at that point, I'd already had it for like 8 years. So I was like mad that I got outed, but also I like did some soul searching as why I was mad. And I realized that like there was no reason to be mad because I'm not mad about having herpes anymore 8 years in. So after that, I decided, being it was COVID and there was a lot going on, I went on Reddit and found out there was herpes subreddits because I didn't even know that that existed. And I started answering, like I made an account and I started posting about my story and stuff. And I realized it'd be easier sometimes because I didn't like how some of the subreddits were ran to run my own. So I made this subreddit, and actually I made the subreddit after the TikTok because what happened was randomly on TikTok, I was downloaded it like everyone does in COVID, and I was scrolling through, and randomly on my For You page, this girl was staring at me, and she goes, "Just two bad bitches with herpes staring at each other," and I was like,
Who
I,
was that? Who was that?
I don't know her name, and she's no longer a herpes advocate. I tried looking her up, and I went back to my first video I ever made, and her entire account is gone. So I have no idea who she was, and I'm so mad about it because I just thought she was just going to be there forever, and she just wasn't. And I was like, oh my god, like I didn't even think of, like I didn't know you can make social media about this. Like I was taught my, like I was in my head, I was like, this is something you're not supposed to talk about. You're not supposed to tell anybody. It's your secret, just between you and a partner. So I didn't even think about advocacy as an option because I was like, no, no one talks about it. Like we just is quiet. And then I saw that and I started making videos. And then shortly after, I started the subreddit as well. So
Wow. So this is a little that's that speaks to like the nature of the course of herpes advocacy, if you will, for lack of better words. Someone gets a lot of enthusiasm, they're inspired, they create this page, they're brave, they put it out there, they're championing herpes stigma education, and then they disappear. I've
yeah,
seen it so many times over the last 7 years that a lot of people who I've even done podcasts with, like, they've come and gone. Some people were, coaches and doing coaching, and they've done that and then just transitioned or disappeared, or maybe it was too overwhelming for them. I don't know, but I've seen that a lot, and you've been doing this for how long now?
probably 3.5 years, I
Yeah,
think. I
so
think
what
something like that.
keeps you what keeps you consistent? Like, why are you still here?
So ironically, I have dropped off a little bit on the making content on TikTok front, just because I realized I had a couple of videos go viral, and it's a lot of work when you have a video go viral. You have endless amounts of troll comments, endless amounts of "oh, buy from Doctor Boo 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 Boo," like so you have to constantly filter those out because you don't want to give people false hope. And I also had to deal with a lot of the trolls, and you don't want to leave the trolls in your comments because you don't want newly diagnosed people to see that and like feel worse about themselves. So you have kind of like an obligation. And it was kind of became all encompassing. And I realized that I don't want to be famous for having herpes. I just want to help people. So I took a step back on as much content creating, but I leave all my content up and I do create once in a while and I do TikTok lives once in a while. This way, if anyone looks up herpes on TikTok, I still pop up and all my information is still there and all my like disclose. I have like a bunch of guides. All those are still there, so I can still help people without having all like the immense amount of stress. Because I, like I said, I had a couple of videos randomly like hitting the millions, and I was like, this is too much. I actually saw myself on a Reddit on a cringe or Chad. Um, like you know that I don't know if you know the subreddit cringe or Chad. Basically, they post a video, and then everyone in the comments votes on whether it's a cringy video or it's a cool video. And like all of a sudden, one of my videos was just on that Reddit page, and people that didn't know I had a TikTok, like in my friend group, were messaging me, "Hey, do you know that you're on Reddit? Like on a cringe or Chad post?" I'm like, excellent, love that for me.
That's how you know you made it, right? When you get the trolls or when you get the criticism.
Reddit did vote that I was Chad, so I do feel kind of cool about that. So like, yay for me.
Yeah, and Reddit's really critical. You can deal with some
They're
very
brutal.
critical people on
Yeah,
there.
Reddit is brutal.
Yeah. So, what made you reach out? How did we end up connecting? Because I am not active on TikTok. I know I need to be before y'all say anything. But yeah, how'd you find something positive for positive people?
So I have a bunch of guides that I put together to give people to help people with resources and stuff. So I do a lot of deep dives on the internet for any type of positive herpes media. So I found you first on TikTok. I found you through Herpes Goddess, I think. I know, right? So I'm not a podcast person for the most part. Like I don't really listen to all that many podcasts, so I forget that they exist sometimes. So I didn't even think to look there. But Herpes Goddess was doing a promotional thing for all POC people who have platforms for herpes. So I found you through that, and then from your page, I found the something positive for positive people. And then it took me a while because I had something positive for positive people also on my guide somewhere else. And just like you just did with the Reddit thing, it took me a minute to connect the two. But like, oh, this guy is also this guy. That makes sense. But yeah, that's how I found you through there. And then I found you through Reddit because you posted on herpes questions the survey for a bunch of surveys and stuff like that.
Hey, thanks for letting me leave that up because
Oh, of
people
course.
take
Yeah.
that shit down so fast whenever I
Yeah,
post surveys, and like it's genuinely to like gather the information and help people. I'm
exactly.
not asking for anything
No.
other than for people to share their experiences or like I don't know. Like I've always had this challenge of entering places that are a really good fit for this resource that is something
Mhm.
positive for positive people, and then it being taken down because I'm the one posting it, it seems spam.
Yeah.
Whereas if anyone else were to post it, or even if I posted it myself and I just didn't use I, me, my language,
Yeah.
and I was just like, hey, y'all, like I found this thing, it's out there, y'all should check it out, it'd be
Yeah.
fine. But when it's mine, that's when it's deemed spam. And I don't want to play that game. It just feels like unethical. It doesn't align with me, yeah, intentionally. I wish that people could find the resources sooner because there's a ton of support groups that are out
So
there
many.
where there's so many people, but the organization, the support groups are governed by people who don't allow you to share things that combat stigma in any way.
Yeah, I hate certain so certain subreddits are worse than others. I realized that I didn't like how some of them were run, or I thought they were either being too strict or too lenient. Because I on my subreddit, I absolutely have no patience for people sending images in asking if things are herpes or asking does this look like an outbreak. I'm like, no one here is a medical professional. I'm not you're not putting that on someone on Reddit like, no, you're fine. And then you pass it on to your partner. And it's like, well, this person on Reddit told me, so I have no patience for that. I have no patience for like really dumb questions like you don't understand on Reddit. I get like at least one or two a day of some guy messaging in there how he slept with like 8 sex workers and now he's concerned he has herpes, and I'm like, why are you sleeping with a bunch of sex workers if you're concerned, and B, go get tested. Like I don't like you're just posting it here. Like what am I supposed to do with this? Like
People do not like the real answer to
no.
things, and they don't like go get tested, right?
No.
The most logical thing, if you're concerned about having herpes, go get a herpes
Yeah,
test. It's as
go get
simple
herpes
as
test.
that. The
Yep.
pictures that you send, like you might get some people who are going to just like no one's answer is going to be good enough for you.
No.
Nobody. And
And it
no
looks different.
volume either.
It looks different for every person too. So like how am I supposed to know, like I am a cis female, so how am I supposed to know what it looks like on a cis male? I don't know. I don't have the same equipment. I don't have the same skin tone as some people. So how am I supposed to know what it looks like on every person? It doesn't make any sense. So I just take those down immediately. Like I have no patience for them. But like I always like your surveys and stuff, those I leave up because I always click on the links to make sure they take you somewhere that aren't like bad or or like asking for social security information and stuff like that. So I always check and make sure that they're good. But like once I'm like, okay, no, this is a real survey, like leave it up. It's good.
Perfect.
Just
Yeah.
yeah.
That's great. I love that you are very vigilant in maintaining the integrity of the community because I think that that's a lot different than the way that some people run some of these groups. Like, why can't we ourselves, like the people who have herpes, be given a voice loud enough to have some type of an impact? Because there's so much poor information that's out there that doesn't take our experiences into consideration. We have all these people saying, here's how many people have herpes. Where are you getting this information
Yeah.
from? Who's taking these surveys? Where are they? Because they're not in the places where people have herpes
Yeah.
are, which are the herpes support groups.
Yeah.
And so May 23rd this year, I hosted the Something Positive for Positive People Herpes Stigma Conference. And before hosting it, like there have been so many times where I've tried to present the survey data. I've tried to present on disclosure and things like that and make it free. And people would
Yeah.
not show up to it. Like
No.
people weren't showing up to these things. So all of a sudden, like I decide, okay, I'm going to get some presenters. I'm going to pay them some money. I invested in someone to consult with me about hosting a conference. Shout out to Steph Zapata
Mhm.
for their support in this. And I made it $75 and 120 people show up.
People
It's
don't
so
trust
wild to
free.
me.
Yeah, people just don't trust free things,
I
I think.
see.
And it's just so sad because like you're sitting here trying to do the right thing and like post free resources and stuff like that. I will say, as far as other subreddit leaders, like moderators and stuff, it is a very thankless job being a Reddit moderator. The amount of times I get screamed at in direct messages for like just like, and people get mad at me how I run
For
my
people
page.
not reading. Yeah, people
Yeah,
don't read
the
the
rules, they don't
rules.
read the rules, they don't read the whatever, and then they get mad at me and they call me like I've been called a snowflake, I've been told to go outside, I've been like all this like crazy stuff, and it's like I it gets very tiring
What,
sometimes.
what's a snowflake?
Oh, a snowflake is like someone who's like super sensitive and delicate like a snowflake, so they get offended by everything.
All right, I'm glad
So
I asked because I was like snowflake,
no,
like
yeah. So it's like I get called those names and stuff. And I'm like, you realize I'm doing this for free, right? Like I'm moderating, and like I literally tell them the same thing every time. I'm like, Reddit is free to make a subreddit. If you don't like how mine is run, start your own. Like that's the beauty of the internet. Start your own. Or use one of the 4 other ones because like 7 different herpes subreddits. Like use one of those. Like get off my page. Yeah.
let's talk about that because people do have so much criticism for the way that you do your thing versus the way that they're not doing the thing but want you to do
Yeah.
the thing that they wish you were doing.
Yeah.
I've run into this issue with people being upset with me for not advocating for a cure or
Oh
not
my
talking more
God.
about that. Oh, what you got to say about it before I go on?
No, it's the same thing. Like that's another thing that I have a huge thing with. I tend to put a lot of the cure, like 'cause people go crazy about the cure and like they're constantly talking about it and constantly this, and I try to keep that on the herpes question page to a minimum. Being there is a subreddit called Herpes Cure Research, which I'm banned from, by the way. I am
Why are you
banned
banned? Why are you banned from there?
from being too positive. Because I would go into the herpes subreddit and I was following that one as well as some of the other ones, and people would be posting things like they wanted to like die because they got herpes or they feel like they're gonna die alone, and I would tell them, hey, look, you can like do things and not die alone while you're still also waiting for a cure, and then
And
the
then they're like
moderators,
blocked.
yeah, and I eventually did get banned. I think I might be reinstated now, but randomly a herpes cure research person like from that mod group will message me, like not realizing it's the same person they banned, and they'll message me be like, you know, you have a herpes platform. You should be promoting the cure and raising money for the cure. I was like, are you kidding? I once on TikTok, I tried asking every one of my followers to donate $1 so I can come up, so I can make a new herpes dating platform other than positive singles, and no one donated a single dollar. I'm like, can you imagine? Like, I can't fundraise. No one pays money to me for doing anything. So I'm like, no, get out of here.
So So that kind of goes back to the cure thing. So people would rather, you know, I might have said this in my last podcast recording, but people would much rather, subscribe to hope than
Mm,
what the reality is.
yep,
And you mentioned in those spaces, there's people who say that they want to kill themselves, and like
yep.
I get that hope is one of those avenues to keep them here a little bit longer, but I always say I've had herpes for 11 years. If
Me
I were
too.
to have waited for a cure, high twins, high five. If I were to have waited on a cure to come, I would still just be waiting. How would my
Yeah,
life have looked if I just sat, quietly behind the scenes, having not done any of my own self work or
yep,
dating or only dating people who have herpes and settling for the limited resources that are out there, that are
yep.
the communities, the support groups, the dating sites, right? My life would be trash.
Oh God,
And
I was terrible.
I see people who have struggled through hearing me, and they'll like it takes a while sometimes. They're like, there's a guy that I talk to pretty often. He's probably going to hear this too. And I'm very appreciative of him because I always wonder who the F is listening to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And he often tells me like how good my podcast is and how
Oh, that's
these
awesome.
interviews and these conversations go. And it's just the truth compared to some other people who are doing similar work, and the quality of what they say or what they're talking about, and how just not true some of the stuff is, or not
Yeah.
real, how not real it is.
Realistic.
It
Yeah.
would be so easy to say, hey y'all, we're going to get a cure soon, all you got to do is give this money, and people will give like their life savings to
Yeah.
being able to just not have to tell somebody that they have herpes. And it's honestly, it a little bit scares me. It kind of scares me because we're so, to one level, self-absorbed, to where we will sacrifice everything to where we get to just maintain or uphold this image of perfection and not having an STI. And
Yeah.
then on the other end, like what's actually being done, the thankless work of supporting people and presenting real information and doing the work of these surveys, these platforms, these podcasts, it gets the support that I've gotten. Most of the support that I've gotten has come from people who don't have herpes, sex educators,
Yeah.
public health professionals, even the people who came to the conference, uh, the financial support, let me say that. And the financial support has really come from public health professionals who are like, oh, like this is what is happening. And all I need, like I'm one person, and there's a couple of
Yeah.
other people who are speaking in the way that I am, but the volume, the quality of what I'm saying means nothing compared to the quantity of what else is being said.
Yeah.
So my voice, for the accuracy and truth that it provides, because I'm actually in the trenches talking to people who have herpes, and giving them enough confidence to come onto this platform, share their experiences vulnerably, that's not being listened to or heard by these bigger institutions and
Yeah.
organizations that can create change. I always say we won't get a cure until like five things need to happen in order for that to occur. One, we need better testing. We don't have a good test, and the
Yep.
people who don't have herpes don't know that they don't have herpes. They're just assuming
Yep.
because they haven't shown up positive on the test. So first off, we need one test that says, yes, you have herpes. No, you don't have herpes. The second thing that we need is for people who don't have herpes to know that they don't have herpes or do have herpes. The
No, they're
only
not getting
way.
tested too.
Exactly. And so this needs to be part of an STI testing panel. If we're going to call herpes an STI, we need to include it with the standard STI panel, to where people are at least getting tested once a year. And the general public knows, hey, you need to ask your partner if they've been tested for herpes if you're scared of getting herpes. And then the third thing that needs to happen is the people who have it need to understand what their triggers are and not immediately jump on antivirals and start taking these on a daily basis, or like chewing them like candy because they're
Yeah.
scared of telling people that they have herpes, or they're scared of getting an outbreak, and just understand how this virus works enough to where they just let their body take care of it the way that they do. And then we see a change in response from the people who make antivirals to maybe make a better medication or maybe create a vaccine. And then we can start talking about a cure. But people's response to stigma is so what's the word? It's not disorient. It's
Uneducated.
misguided. Yeah, it's
It's
uneducated.
super. That's the other thing too, is everyone who gets diagnosed needs to actually, instead of just going into immediate panic mode, try learning about it. Like I know me and you were both diagnosed 13 years ago. So when you Googled herpes 13 years ago, there was nothing really positive about it. It was just
I
like,
wasn't 13. I wasn't
oh,
13.
11 years. 11
Yeah.
years? Yeah,
Yeah,
mine
I
was
ain't
11.
want nobody to get confused and be like,
Sorry,
you had
no.
herpes. You might have gave me herpes.
You know
Oh,
what it is?
no.
I was in my head, I said 2013 and 11 years at the same time because it was
All right.
2013, 11 years ago. That's what I did. Yeah, because I was diagnosed in 2013. But back in 2013, there was no real positive spins on herpes. It was just, from what I Googled, it was just the World Health Organization, CDC, and a couple of fear mongering sites that were just like, become a virgin and you'll never get herpes, like those types of things. But now, especially if you Google the word herpes, so many nice things pop up. Like your podcast will pop up, good YouTube videos. Ella Dawson pops up. Um, if you type in herpes podcast, that comes up. It should. At least it did when I Googled it a while ago. Um, if you go on TikTok and type in the word herpes, it's not just scary stuff anymore. It's all people like posting good things about herpes, which is just so much better than it was back when we were first diagnosed 11 years ago.
I run a pay-per-click campaign,
Mhm.
and I'm not gonna go into too much detail about it because I don't want my ops to hear it. But I'm running a pay-per-click campaign, and I was getting 200 people a day that were searching for and clicking on something positive for positive people
Yeah.
stuff. And herpes, let's say stigma. Let's type in herpes stigma. So I was curious to see like if I popped up where I'd pop up, and it honestly looks like it's not up here anymore. Boo. Um.
It
Anyway,
definitely was at some point. I don't know. I like when I was, because like when I just as a outsider tried googling certain herpes words. Like when I was first diagnosed, I wanted to like redo it. I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you have Snapchat.
so Snapchat hit me with some type of a scam thing
No.
happened, and people gave money to it. So I just was like, I'm not ever doing this again.
So one of the new things they added on Snapchat is an AI robot, kind of like Alexa.
Hmm.
So I just for shits and giggles typed to the AI robot on Snapchat, and I was like, I just got diagnosed with herpes. I don't know what to do. The AI sent me the nicest message that if I would have read that when I was 19 years old and got diagnosed, I would have cried. It was like all nice resources. It was telling me how I'm not less of a person, how it's not a big deal, it's super common, and like giving me all legitimate resource. And that was just from an AI on Snapchat. So like I just can't like it's just so much of a better situation. I feel like now, like for newly diagnosed people, like just to find resources that aren't so cold and scientific, which is just so much nicer. Which is why it's like I'm so sad that the stigma is still so much of a thing when there's still so many resources out there that are so much better. Um, but I tell people that all the time, like just like learn about it a little bit. It won't be that scary if you learn about it.
Yeah, and it's hard to learn when the only things you can think of learning are so like they are dark, and
Yeah,
when you hear people talk about herpes, the only things that are allowed to stay up in these support groups are fear-based things, right? Like I've posted in groups, like even just being supportive and positive, and my posts have been removed, and I just left the groups. It's like there's no place for me here. There's no
yeah,
place for somebody who's like, hey, I don't need this group, in a place where the people who run the group are like putting you out for that. Like that's what really messes me up about this whole thing. When I was diagnosed, I remember I never searched herpes alone. I searched like managing herpes or managing herpes symptoms, those kinds of things. And that was actually how I got into yoga. So I'm 500 hours certified to teach yoga,
oh nice.
and I thank you. And I'm enrolled in yoga therapy training, and yoga was very helpful to me. I've had 3 outbreaks over the last 11 years that I've had it,
Wow.
and one was the first one. The second one was after I got fired from the job, and the third one was after having a ton of sugar. And these were 2, 3 years apart, and I haven't had one since 2021.
Me
Now,
neither.
oh, yay, twins again. Hey, high five.
Yay, that's actually funny.
And yeah, like I've tried to introduce yoga as a means of managing herpes, but it's not a cure. And that's what people want. Like when I talk to people who are newly diagnosed, the thoughts and beliefs that they have about themselves as a result of just now knowing what their status is, I often tell them, like, hey, how long do you think you've had herpes? And now, just because you know you have herpes, you're this thing, but you haven't
Yeah,
been this thing for as long as you've had it and not known. So all of a sudden now, like this is who we are. Is that what we
yeah.
doing here? No, come on.
I know for me, I had the opposite reaction when I was first diagnosed. I decided to ignore it entirely and just hope it like went away on its own. So I had a lot of reoccurring outbreaks because I did absolutely nothing to help myself.
Hmm.
I was just like, well, if I ignore it, I'll just never have an outbreak again. And like not how that works.
Nah,
Especially not your first year. So I had a bunch of recurring outbreaks my first year, but then it gets less over time. Like I naturally like I didn't start doing major research on how to treat outbreaks until I started my advocacy journey. I was doing nothing. I was just hoping for the best. Um, but it is not recommended by any means. Like do things to help yourself because I did not.
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
But yeah, I naturally stopped having outbreaks. I didn't have outbreaks for like 4 years straight at some point, and then, like you said, in 2021, I got COVID really bad. So I was
mm,
like super sick. Like I had the Omicron variant. I was dying, and I ended up with my first ever dual outbreak because I have both oral and genital herpes. I usually get one outbreak in one spot, and like that's it. But that was the first time after the Omicron variant. I ended up with it in tandem, like the same time. They were like,
oh damn.
"Yay!" Yeah, it was not
Uh,
great.
I remember the first time like we organized as like a group of people with herpes and no one got COVID and we were like, oh my God, because we have herpes, we can't get COVID.
Yeah.
That's not how that works. It didn't
I
it didn't
yeah.
work that way. It did
No,
not work
unfortunately.
out.
I also heard the theory that if you have like O positive blood or something like that, you can't get herpes. And I have O positive blood and got herpes. And not herpes, O positive blood, you can't get COVID. And I got COVID with O positive blood and herpes. So both theories are
I was gonna
incorrect.
say, listen, you better be careful because you don't want people putting on their profiles and looking for somebody O positive blood type.
Yep.
um, so what are some of the we've talked about some of the challenges in advocacy, right?
Mhm.
Right. But what are some of the positives? What's some of the, it's a thankless job, but in your position of the TikTok, the Reddit, what are some like positive, fun, good stories that you have?
So I have a couple of really great. Overall, being a herpes advocate on TikTok has been fantastic. Reddit is where I meet the most trolls and the most pushback and anger is Reddit because Reddit tends to be a more angry place. I feel like, but TikTok in general, I've had. So when I first posted my first video, I was expecting to be dragged. I was expecting like everyone to tell me I was a disgusting slut and to go home. But instead, every comment in my comment section was like, "Oh my god, me too," or "Oh my god, you're so brave," or "Oh my god, you're so like all these really nice things. And since then, it's just kind of, for the most part, with the exception of a couple of viral videos that end up on like an awkward side of TikTok where you get the trolls coming through. It's been a super warming like feeling to see my comment section and seeing not only people asking legitimate, educated questions, but other people creating like a community in my comment section of support for each other. And that's happened a bunch where like I'll just be like I'll wake up and my TikTok video will be like, "Oh, you have 45 comments." I'm like, "Oh my god, what happened?" And I'll look and it's actually just two people supporting each other, which is such like a nice thing. And I do randomly get messages like of people saying like, "Oh my god, you changed my life," or "Oh, you've helped me so much." And like those are just, or when like someone you're helping, because like I also randomly will follow being people who message me will follow each other on Instagram because I feel more comfortable if you follow them back and I don't really care. So randomly, like there's this one person who was telling me that they were going to die alone and never have a relationship, and I'm just going to be celibate for the rest of my life. And they got engaged recently. So like that was really nice to see because it was like, look at you not being alone and stuff. So like randomly you get stuff like that, which is just really nice to see and really great. And yeah, I just like it's great.
Good. And I think the message that I get is usually when I'm like ready to stop doing this or transition, I'm like, all right, I can go make a lot more money if I go do this thing over here.
Yeah.
Right. That's when I get the message. It's always the same too. It's
Yep.
like, hey, please don't ever stop doing what you're doing. I was gonna kill
Yep.
myself. I decided not to. And I'm like, all right, like
Fuck.
God is clearly talking to me. And I always say, like, there's a very huge difference between passion and purpose.
Yeah.
And passion is what you want to do, purpose is what you have to do. Like, you can't not do that thing.
Yeah.
And that's what it very much feels like here is like, ain't nobody else doing it, at least not the way I am. And there's some progress. It might be slow. There's a lot of rejection that I
Mhm.
deal with on a regular basis. There's a lot of just like, all right, I'm building this thing and nobody's coming to this,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
It's so much of that, but when it isn't, it's amazing. Like the conference was amazing.
Mhm.
The connections that I've made have been amazing along the
Yep.
way. The upcoming things that are happening, the realization and the confidence has come. Like I've failed and been rejected a lot more through this than I ever have been for having herpes in romantic relationships. And it's like,
Yeah.
why am I doing this to myself? Right. And then you get one of those kinds of messages, and it makes it all worth it at
Definitely.
the end of it all.
Also the confidence thing, like you said. So if you ever do a deep dive on my TikTok and scroll all the way back to the beginning, actually you can see it here. If you look, I have a rash. So I have a nerves rash. Whenever I get nervous, I break out into a rash. Happens all the time with this type of stuff. It just does. I'm not nervous about having herpes, not nervous about having this conversation, but my body is for some reason. But if you scroll back on my TikTok, you'll notice that I am covered in blotches almost every video. And it's because each video was super nerve wracking to me. And the first time I got a bunch of negative comments, I immediately deleted the video and I was like, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And then I thought about it and I'm like, why am I not ready? What's going on? Like, let's unpack this. And I ended up becoming so much more confident just in general because of this TikTok. Like, just because I didn't realize how much I was hiding the fact that I had herpes from people, even though I wasn't really hiding it anymore until I went public and I realized like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. So I just didn't care anymore. Like, and now I see if I'm actually excited every time I get a mean comment because it's like more content. So I like make a really funny video about it and I'm like, well, here's why you're stupid and like do the whole bit. So it's like definitely helped my confidence a lot. It's definitely like my first original videos. When I was first diagnosed, I never called it herpes. I'd call it the herpes. I couldn't get the full word out because that word was gross, but herpes wasn't for me. And my original videos, I would only say herpes. I wouldn't say herpes. And then you could see the transition. Just suddenly, I was just like, oh yeah, herpes. Like yeah, whatever, you know. So it was really nice to like do a deep dive of my own profile and see how much I've grown as a person.
I've done that too. I've gone back to the beginning. I think
Yep.
there's about 1,300 posts at this point, and I
Mhm.
started the account when I started the podcast too. So I'm going through a process of branding things. Like this is going to be the stigma minimization podcast. Like that's the thing that we're actively doing is minimizing stigma, and
Mhm.
so it's still like something positive for positive people, but stigma minimization is like the act of what we're doing. And
Yeah.
so I'm looking to have the content be more concise to maybe like go deeper into the community that already exists and let this be something that people can support. The color scheme, everything has been so easy for me to do. It's just like
Mhm.
not, you send people to my page and they don't know what this is because some of it is videos of me talking, some of it is a herpes statistic or something. But yeah, I'm very much like at this point, it's been 7 years that I've been running something positive for positive
That's
people.
amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's the longevity is like that's you have stamina. That's great.
appreciate that. Yeah, the consistency is one of my core values. And while on the topic of core values, I think a lot of people may not realize what their own are. Like how you just mentioned the self-inquiry. You're like, why does this make me feel this way? And then
Mhm.
you being willing to not only ask that question, but be willing to engage with it. That engagement is so critical to our own personal growth. And I think a lot of people may not value personal growth because they don't see like the end result fast enough. Everything is so instant in terms of gratification. Like our next sex partner might be a thumb swipe away. The next orgasm we have is going to be from a quick porn search.
Yep.
There's so many of those things, even getting food delivered, right? You press a couple
Yeah.
buttons, bam, you got that meal that you otherwise would have had to get up and put effort into going to the place to get it. And is yeah, I hope to see the through this work, through our advocacy, that more people are able to go outside of that herpes, only mindset and thought
Yeah.
process and into of this being an opportunity to really see what's there. Because there's a lot that's here.
Well,
And
that's the first. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
no, no, go, go, go.
I think that's the first question I ask anybody who messages me for help. I ask them, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just like overwhelmed. Like the stigma is really bothering me." So I make them break it down for me. I'm like, "Well, what about the herpes diagnosis is bothering you the most? Is it the symptoms? Is it the unknown? Is it the dating? Like, which part of it is bothering you the most? And usually we can unpack one problem at a time, and it makes
Yeah.
it so much easier to digest than just everything all at once. Because that's
Yeah.
how I did it for myself. Is like I tried to figure out what was the problem, or like the main source of the problem, and then break that down, and then all the other stuff kind of fell into place on its own, you know?
Yeah, I feel that 100%. I want to take it back to talking about the cure. So when we talk about these advocacy components, right? There's what we do in terms of just trying to help people feel better about living with it, and then there's what else is happening out there, which is like people are really pushing for a cure. It'd be great, if there was one, but the underlying things to your feelings about the herpes and the diagnosis are still going to be there. There
Oh
may
yeah.
be a cure for herpes, but what about those feelings? What about those emotions? What about that shame and stigma? What happens when you cure yourself of herpes? You go out and you meet someone who maybe gives you HIV. Now we've got this compounded thing that wasn't
Yep.
dealt with on top of now this other thing. Are you going to go as hard for a cure for HIV too, or is it going to be so overwhelming that maybe you do decide to end your life? And that's really like what my concerns are, is that people don't feel like they have options, that they can't make a choice of how to go about living with this. They feel
Yeah.
like the power of their choice has been completely taken away from them and they can't do anything. And the
Yeah.
last thing I want people to think is that they just can't do anything regarding this diagnosis.
Yeah, that's also why I don't advocate for any type of cure as of now. Also because there's so much room for disappointment right now.
So
Um,
much.
I think it was kind of great for me personally that I was diagnosed so many years ago, because when I was diagnosed, the cure wasn't even like on the horizon.
It
It was
wasn't even a
nothing.
thought.
So
Yeah.
I had to learn how to deal with it because there was no talk of a cure. But now the problem is, like, so many things can happen with science where the trial drug right now might not work. The trial drug might only work for females and not males. It might only work for HSV1, not HSV2. So it's like I don't want to like promote something that's so unknown, because then I'm giving people false hope if later on they're like, oh, by the way, it's only for HSV2. And you're like, well, all the people with HSV1 can just go kill themselves, I guess. Like, so I tried my hardest to not report on anything until there's concrete, like, timelines, concrete proof that it works, concrete proof that there's also like a thing about a vaccine to prevent you from getting herpes that's also like in the works apparently. I don't know. So I don't know. It's just too much unknown stuff to try to promote it at this time, I feel like, for me personally.
Yes. There's so many unknowns. We don't know what this could look like. We don't know what's actually happening. Like, just like with COVID, we see
Mhm,
all these years later, there's now all of these things being said about the vaccine and how this was rushed or what it did to people.
mhm.
There's a lot of just information and it's not really useful information. So this is something that people are really wanting to rush. And I don't see a cure happening in this lifetime. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong and that's
I
fine.
definitely I definitely don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. I mean, the thing is with herpes is a lot of people, so first off, it's not killing people, so the doctors don't really care about it as much, because it's like, "Oh, well, you get a small rash once in a while, like, I'd rather spend my time doing something like for them more fulfilling."
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who still have that internalized stigma that it's like, "Well, you deserve to get herpes for being a slut." You have those people who still exist in the world, unfortunately, so they're not funding it, and it's just like people are just not really, I don't know. It's just there's other options besides just getting cured. You can figure out ways to like live with it, how to help manage it, how to date with it. Like there is other options basically until something happens.
Yeah, it feels like people want to just undo it and not deal with the rejection, not deal with talking about it, make it go away. And people are willing to risk it all to just make this go away. And like,
Hmm.
it's not going to go away. And the
Yeah.
feelings that you have about it aren't going to go away. Let's see what those are, what there is to learn from them. And then moving forward, how about, we look at, okay, I often use this example of I ask people about their relationship to the person that gave them herpes, right?
Hmm.
And in some cases, it's somebody that they knew that they had no business being with, that they had felt red flags.
Yeah.
It was a drunk night. It was a one-time thing. They were unattractive. They weren't really attracted to each other. They weren't compatible. And those are the things that a cure is not going to treat,
No,
right? Because
you're
you
still not
still,
having unsafe sex practices, so
and it's not the kind of sex you want to be having with the kind of people you want to be having it with. And some people may think, oh, well, now that I have herpes, I can't have sex with hot people. But there's people with herpes who are attractive, and there's also people who don't have herpes who are attracted to people with herpes. So the thought process is, it's really, it's lazy, to say it in the nicest way, right?
yeah.
Like some people just aren't going to be attracted to you. Some people aren't going to be attracted to me. Some people aren't going to be attracted to each other. And those lingering thoughts of, man, I wish I didn't have sex with this person. Why did I do that to myself? Right? Let's deal with that and not have sex with people that we don't want to have sex with. As
So
simple as that.
as far as the not sleeping with hot people, so I am in a support group. I found it later on in life, but the support group I'm in is on Discord. Goosebumps, shout out to Goosebumps Faithful. They're great people. Very like they're the opposite of other support groups that I have been a part of or tried out. Like you said, very anti-positive. They're the opposite. They're very positive. But one of the girls in there said that HSV stands for hot sex virus. You only hotties get herpes because someone clearly wanted to sleep with you, and that's how you got herpes. So only hot people have herpes, and it is very much true. I have slept with a wide range of attractive people, so you can sleep with attractive people with herpes. Um, so
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing else for me to add to that. So looking at our conversation, we covered advocacy, we talked about the cure, we talked about positive, uplifting things, we talked a little bit about like our personal experiences in the advocacy space. I want to ask you before I let you go, is there anything else that you would like to touch on or share on this platform for people who have herpes?
just basically, if anyone ever wants to reach out or need someone to talk to, my DMs are always open on Instagram and TikTok at Bubbly and Blue, and Reddit is my lovely lady lumps.
Can you
So,
spell that?
sure, BUBBLIEINBLU, Bubbly
Perfect.
and Blue. Yeah, and
All
then
right.
my lovely lady lumps 69 is self-explanatory.
All right, cool. Well, we'll link that in the show notes. Thank you
Awesome.
so much. I appreciate you making
Oh,
the
this has been
time
great.
and for being able to do this. I know we wanted to do it in person since we're so close, but I don't foresee being able to get like a physical
Yeah,
space for a while to do this. But when the time comes, like I do look forward to hosting like in-person community events,
that'd be
live
awesome.
podcasts and mixers, and maybe this can be something that gets funded as well. So fingers crossed. All right. I will let you go if you want to hang out for a few minutes and we can
Sure.
just kind of debrief about the episode. Cool. All right, y'all. That concludes this episode of Something Positive for Positive People. Please like, rate, review, share, subscribe to this podcast. If you're in New York City, I hope to see you September 29th at the Safe Sex Expo. I will be there with my now board member, Jolene Hernandez, who's the producer of the No Shame in This Game film, which is a documentary about people living with herpes and stigma and what that looks like for a handful of people, me being one of those people. Self promo. The Safe Sex Expo is a conference, or I'm sorry, it's going to be in person. It's going to be 2 floors of just introductory to the resources of people in kink, sex positivity, non-monogamy, bringing it in a more digestible way to the general public, monogamous folks, people who might, be curious about just spanking or a little bit of choking or spitting or something like that, and nothing that's going to be too extreme and maybe scares you away. If you have any questions about that, Courtney Brame on Instagram. Yes, my Instagram handle changed. It is Courtney Brame. I don't know how, but my name became available. It never was available before, but here we are. I got that thing. So I'm at Courtney Brame. You can hit me up there. You can email me, Courtney at spfpp.org. And yeah, till next time, that's it.